Emily Bennett, 4 years old, sat quietly by the small window in her bedroom. Outside, dusk swallowed the sky, leaving behind the darkness she feared most. Since her mother's death in a car accident 2 years ago, the night had become an invisible enemy that ate away at Emily's fragile heart, stealing her laughter, her giggles, and the bedtime stories her mother once whispered under the covers. The old wooden house where Emily and her father, David Bennett, moved after the funeral was her mother's childhood home. Warm yet lonely, it held memories neither of them dared to unpack. David, a construction engineer, had left behind his busy city job, hoping this quiet countryside might ease the wounds he and his daughter carried. But what they brought along instead was silence and ghosts of a life that no longer existed. Every night, David sat in the living room, eyes fixed on a muted television, while Emily hid in her bedroom, whispering secrets to the smiling photo of the woman who once filled their house with light. Emily didn't know how to mend the emptiness. Her father was too lost in his own grief, and she was far too small to know how to heal either of them. Until that one night, when a faint sound drifted through the backyard, brushing against her frozen heart. The faint whimper returned the second night. At first, Emily thought she was imagining it, like all those times she dreamed she heard her mother calling her name. But as she stood frozen by the window, she heard it again. Weak, choking back pain, like the cry of a living soul abandoned in the cold. A drizzle tapped gently against the roof. Emily wrapped her thin blanket around her shoulders, quietly unlatched the back door, and stepped cautiously onto the path that led to the forgotten lot behind their yard. It used to be a half-finished project, abandoned after her mother died, left untouched by her father ever since. Under the trembling beam of her flashlight, Emily saw it, a large, dark-furred dog, its head tightly wedged between the rusty iron bars of an old gate. Its soaked fur clung to its ribs, mud caked around its legs, and its eyes glistened with a desperation and fear that cut straight through the cold night. She froze. Her heart pounded so loudly it nearly drowned out the dog's low whimpers. Emily had never touched a big dog before, let alone one that was trapped, frightened, and hurting. Her first instinct was to run back inside, wake her father, lock her door, and bury herself under the blankets. But those eyes held her in place. Tired, trembling eyes that looked so much like her own reflection every lonely night. "I'm sorry. I don't know what to do," Emily whispered, tears brimming. The dog whimpered again, tugging at the bars, only to cry out as the iron bit deeper into its neck. Pain twisted its soft cry into a helpless growl. The rain kept tapping softly on the old tin roof as Emily stood frozen, watching the dog struggle helplessly. Its whimpers grew weaker, broken by raspy cries that made her chest ache. Emily knelt down, her small hand trembling as she reached toward its soaked fur. But the moment her fingers brushed it, the dog jerked back, trying to pull free, and let out a sharp cry of pain. She flinched, pulling her hand away, tears blurring her vision. "I'm sorry. I don't know how to help you," she whispered into the rain. One thought burned through the panic. If no one helped it, the dog would die here, alone, cold, and forgotten. A stab of fear twisted in her stomach as she pictured waking her father. He would be angry. He would scold her for sneaking outside at midnight, for being near the abandoned site he always forbade. But then the dog's eyes, those pleading, broken eyes that mirrored her own lonely reflection, told her she couldn't turn away. Emily stood up, heart pounding, and ran as fast as she could back to the house. Rain slapped against her face, her feet slipping on the wet grass. She burst through the door, dashed up the stairs, and pounded on her father's bedroom door. "Daddy, please wake up, please. There's a dog outside. He's stuck. He's going to die. Please, Daddy, please help." David jolted awake, eyes heavy with sleep. He opened his mouth to scold her, but stopped short when he saw her tear-streaked face and trembling hands. He had never seen his daughter look at him like this, so desperate, so full of trust. Okay, slow down. Show me." Emily grabbed his sleeve, tugging him through the house and into the soft rain. When David's flashlight beam found the rusted gate, He muttered under his breath at the sight of jagged metal. "Stay back, Emily. Let me try to bend it." But the dog snarled low in its throat when David approached. It pulled at the bars, eyes wide with terror. Emily dropped to her knees beside it, placing her hand gently on its soaked head. "Shh, it's okay. This is Daddy. He's good. We're going to help you, I promise." Like magic, the growl faded. The dog's wild eyes locked onto Emily's face, breathing ragged but calmer now. David watched, stunned. The animal trusted her completely. David stood before the rusted iron gate, studying the bent metal gripping the dog's neck. He exhaled slowly, the flashlight beam reflecting the worry etched into his face. One hand ruffled Emily's damp hair, the other tested the iron's strength. "I need to go back and get my tools, sweetheart. I can't bend this by hand," David said calmly, though tension flickered in his eyes. Emily nodded, her small hand still resting gently on the dog's soaked head, as if to anchor it to this world. David squeezed her shoulder. "Stay right here. Don't get too close, okay?" "I promise," Emily whispered, her voice trembling but her eyes unwavering. She watched her father run back through the rain, then turned back to her new friend. "Shh, it's okay, Daddy's coming back. It won't hurt for long, I promise," Emily murmured, her lips so close the dog could feel her breath. Even though its fur was drenched and filthy, her hand never flinched. Its eyes locked onto hers, deep, endless black, shimmering with rain and raw pain. Something in that gaze gripped Emily's chest. Fear, trust, and a silent plea that had given to no one but her. She dug into her coat pocket, pulling out a half-crushed biscuit she'd hidden to sneak later. Emily held it just inches from the dog's nose. "Here, eat this. It'll help a little. My mom used to tell me that." At first, the dog just stared at it, too exhausted to react. Then, slowly, it sniffed, flicked out its tongue, and carefully nibbled the biscuit. Emily let out a watery laugh between tears. "Good boy. You're so brave." The rain kept falling, cold and endless, but the warmth of the dog's breath gave Emily courage to sit even closer. Every time it whimpered, she whispered back, "Don't be scared. I'm here. I won't leave you. Okay?" Heavy footsteps crunched through the wet grass. David was back, toolbox in hand and an old crowbar tucked under his arm. He wiped his brow, nodded at Emily to step back. "Stay close, but keep your hand on him if it calms him down." Emily obeyed, never lifting her palm from the dog's matted fur. David positioned the crowbar, braced his feet, and heaved with all his strength. Metal screeched. The dog let out a sharp, pained yelp. Emily nearly burst into sobs. "It's okay. It's okay. Look at me," she pleaded, pressing her forehead to the dog's, uncaring of the mud now streaking her hair. Those dark eyes stared right back, shaking with fear, yet flickering with something like hope, as if it truly hurt her. David grunted, forcing the bar deeper. Another creak, then a loud crack split the rain's whisper. The iron surrendered. The dog's head slipped free at last and collapsed into Emily's waiting arms, panting hard, its tail twitching weakly, like a fragile, "Thank you." Emily hugged him tight, her tears blending with the rain. She whispered into his ear, her voice trembling with relief and fierce promise. "You're safe now. I've got you. You don't have to be scared anymore." The German Shepherd, newly freed from the iron gate, nearly collapsed from sheer exhaustion. His whole body trembled violently, hind legs buckling with every breath. Emily sank down on the wet ground beside him, cradling him in her lap as if her small arms alone could protect him from the cold rain lashing at their backs. David stood frozen for a moment, taking in the scene, his tiny daughter clutching this large, mud-caked dog, her hand moving gently through wet fur, her lips whispering to him like a mother soothing a frightened child. Something deep in David's chest softened, a place hardened too long by grief after losing his wife. "Are you okay? Did he bite you?" David crouched beside them, his voice softer than it had been in years. Emily shook her head, cheeks flushed pink from the chill, "He's good, Daddy. He's just scared. I think he trusts me." David placed a cautious hand on the dog's back. The dog flinched at first, letting out a low growl. But as soon as Emily rested her hand on his head again, he quieted instantly, eyes locked only on her. David exhaled, defeated by the truth. The dog trusted no one but his little girl. "We have to get him inside. He won't survive out here tonight." But the shepherd was heavy and scratched raw around his neck and shoulders. David strained to lift him, staggering under the weight. Emily stayed close, one hand always on the dog's fur as if it tethered him to safety. They finally reached the porch. David lowered him gently onto an old rug near the fireplace. The room filled with the earthy smell of wet fur, mud, and rust. But Emily didn't care. She grabbed an old towel, cushioning it under him so he wouldn't feel the cold floor. The dog let out a deep, rasping sigh, eyelids drooping heavily but fluttering open every time Emily's hand drifted away from his head, as if terrified she'd vanish. "Shadow." The name lit up in Emily's mind the moment she saw him curled up on the old rug near the fireplace. His fur was drenched, clumped with mud, body shivering in sharp spasms with every strained breath. The small kitchen smelled of wet earth and dog fur, but Emily didn't care. David set his toolbox down, arms folded, forehead creased at the mess before him. He barely had time to catch his breath before he saw Emily kneeling beside Shadow, one hand stroking his muddy neck, the other gently feeding him the last crumbs of her hidden biscuit. "Come on, Shadow, eat a little. You have to get strong again." Her voice was barely louder than the crackle of the fire, but Shadow's drooping ears twitched at the sound. David exhaled sharply, pulling out his phone, muttering, "I'll call animal rescue. They know what to do. He could be sick. He could be dangerous." "No!" Emily's cry cut through the quiet like a sob. She whipped around, her eyes red and pleading. "Please don't call them. They'll take Shadow away. I'll take care of him. Daddy, please." David froze. It was the first time she'd called this dog by a name she had just given him, but in that heartbeat, it made him hers. "Sweetheart, he's weak. He might bite you if he panics. We should let the shelter check him, and then we can decide." Emily shook her head fiercely, tears spilling faster. "He won't bite me. You saw it. He trusts me, Daddy. He needs me. Please, don't let them take him. I don't have Mom anymore. I don't want to lose him too." Those words stabbed straight through the walls David had built around his grief. He looked at Shadow, the exhausted dog lifting his weary black eyes to Emily, the flickering firelight dancing in that liquid gaze. There was pain there, but also an anchor. Trust, fragile but real. David crouched lower, slowly brushing a hand down Shadow's muddy back. This time, the dog didn't growl. He let out a raspy sigh, nose nudging weakly into Emily's palm, as if saying, "I hear you." David swallowed hard, pocketing his phone with a resigned sigh. "Okay, he stays for now. Tomorrow I'll call a vet to come here, but if he's too sick, we may have to let them take him for treatment. Do you understand?" Emily nodded fiercely, her small fingers never leaving Shadow's fur. "I understand, but he stays here tonight. He needs to know he has a home now." Shadow wheezed softly, too weak to move, but his front paw shifted slightly, inching closer to Emily's knee. She laughed through her tears and bent low, whispering near his ear, "Shadow, no more iron gates, no more darkness. I'm here. You're safe now." David stood back, watching the pair by the fireplace. His fragile daughter, arms protectively curled around a battered stray who'd chosen her and only her. He shook his head slowly, a tight ache warming somewhere deep inside. Maybe Emily needed this dog as much as the dog needed her. Outside, the rain eased to a gentle mist. Inside their worn kitchen, warmth returned, curling into a father's weary heart, a child's broken one, and a lost soul who finally found his place to rest. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight crept through the kitchen window, Emily was still there, her back resting against the wall, head tipped gently against Shadow's now slightly dry fur. Exhaustion had stolen her into sleep, but her small hand stayed on his back, the invisible thread binding two fearful hearts that found each other on a stormy night. David came downstairs and paused in the doorway. For months, he had grown used to Emily retreating into silence behind her bedroom door, avoiding his eyes, never sleeping anywhere except tightly curled up alone. But here she was, curled around a stray dog, peaceful as if she'd found a safe harbor. He cleared his throat softly. Emily stirred awake, rubbing sleep from her eyes, a sleepy smile blooming the moment she saw Shadow lying beside her, eyes half open, tail wagging weakly when he recognized her. "Go get changed, sweetheart. I called the vet. They're on their way," David said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "Wake up, sweetheart. The vet's almost here." Emily blinked sleep from her eyes, smiling instantly when she felt Shadow nuzzle her hand, his ears flicking back, tail tapping weakly on the rug. "Daddy, promise you won't let them take him away." "I'll be good. I'll take care of him." David sighed, smoothing her messy hair back. "I know, I promise." Soon, Dr. Ann, a kindly older woman with patient eyes, knelt beside Shadow, checking his wounds, injecting antibiotics, and gently bandaging his raw neck. She looked up at David. "David, he was a house dog once, wasn't he? He's not aggressive at all, just scared." David nodded, his voice low with reluctant pity. "Yes." "Neighbors said they'd seen him wandering near that old building behind our yard for weeks, probably abandoned. He didn't know how to survive, and over time, fear just took over." Dr. Ann stroked Shadow's ears like comforting a frightened child. "Poor boy. He's not wild. He's just broken. But look at him with your daughter. He's found what he lost. A family." David's eyes drifted to Emily, crouched by Shadow's side, whispering secrets only he could understand. He knew in that moment, this dog had chosen her as much as she'd chosen him. She cleaned wounds, gave him a gentle injection, bandaged his neck, then turned to David. "So, what's your plan for him? The rescue center can take him in, treat him properly?" Before David could respond, Emily dashed over and stood in front of Shadow, arms stretched wide like a tiny shield. "I'll take care of him. He's not a stray anymore. He has a family now." The vet looked from David to Emily's fierce eyes and chuckled softly. "If your family agrees, I'll teach you everything. But she's something special, your girl." The following days were a blur of small miracles and new struggles. Emily spent every morning brushing out the caked mud from Shadow's coat, spoon-feeding him warm broth, scrubbing dirty blankets without a single complaint. She never flinched at the smell, the mess. She only feared the whimpers he made when pain clawed him awake. On nights when nightmares made Shadow bolt upright, heart pounding, Emily would crawl off her bed, curl around his trembling body, and whisper, "It's okay, Shadow. I'm here. No more dark for you." More than once, David stood unseen in the hallway, hearing those soft words drift through the quiet house. He never imagined a battered, frightened dog could mend the cracked pieces of his daughter's gentle heart. Each afternoon, Emily coaxed Shadow out to the backyard. At first, he barely managed a few shaky steps before collapsing to rest. But with her voice cheering him on, he tried a little more each day, each trembling paw print a tiny victory against fear. Emily clapped, eyes bright with hope. Only he seemed able to revive. One late afternoon, for the first time, Shadow mustered the strength to trot slowly around the yard. Emily clapped and squealed, running after him. Their silhouettes, one girl, one dog, danced in the amber dusk. Two souls racing together away from memories that once chained them. When the sky darkened, Emily sat with her head leaning on Shadow's warm side and whispered, "You know something? I used to be scared of the dark too. I was scared after Mom left. Scared to be alone, but you came to me just when I needed you the most." Shadow tilted his head, nudging her wet cheek, licking away her tears. In those deep black eyes, there was no fear left, only quiet trust and a promise. From now on, they would face the dark together. In the days that followed, David's old house felt strangely warm for the first time in years. No more quiet, hesitant footsteps from Emily every morning. Instead, her soft hums, her whispered conversations with Shadow, and the gentle tap-tap of dog paws on wooden floors filled the air. Before school each day, Emily insisted on spending at least 10 minutes beside Shadow. She adjusted his collar, freshened his water, and stroked his floppy ears. "Be good, Shadow. I'll be back soon." And Shadow answered with that calm, deep gaze, like a storm-tossed lake turned glass smooth. From the kitchen, David often paused, coffee mug forgotten in his hand. How long had it been since he'd heard Emily giggle while opening the curtains, or seen her cling to his sleeve just to say, "Daddy, look." All of it sparked to life again because of a frightened dog once stuck behind iron bars. One afternoon, David stood quietly on the porch while Emily coaxed Shadow around the yard. He saw the trust in Shadow's eyes, no more fear, only warmth. And in Emily's glowing face, flushed from laughter, David saw something he thought he'd lost forever: hope. That night, David sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at a cold cup of tea. He flipped open his old laptop and pulled up the dusty garden plans his late wife had dreamed of. He smiled to himself and whispered, "It's time." The next day, David pulled on work gloves, dragged out old timber, and started clearing the overgrown yard. Emily came running out, wide-eyed. "Daddy, what are you doing?" He ruffled her hair with a grin. "Building Shadow a proper home and giving you both a warm yard to play in together." Then he got to work, measuring planks, mixing cement, replacing the rusty gate, patching old fence holes. He built a sturdy wooden kennel right beside the kitchen door, lined it with soft bedding, placed a clean water bowl, and hung a neat sign, "Shadow's Home." Whenever he paused to catch his breath, he'd spot Emily crouched beside Shadow, cooing to him or helping gather nails. Her bright laughter mingled with the hammering and sawing, a simple magic stitching David's weary heart back together, piece by piece. That weekend, David surprised them both by driving Emily and Shadow to the big park near the lake. It was Shadow's first time venturing beyond their yard. Emily held his leash tight, fingers curled around it as if afraid he might vanish into the city noise. At first, Shadow trembled at the hum of motorbikes and the shouts of other children. He pressed his head against Emily's knees, eyes wide with old panic. But Emily knelt calmly beside him, arms wrapping his head, whispering her spell again and again. "It's okay. I'm here. No one's leaving you." Like magic, his ragged breathing slowed. His ears, once flat in fear, slowly lifted. Moments later, he started walking beside her, step by careful step. Every time he hesitated, Emily waited, smiling, tapping his nose gently. "Good boy, Shadow." Under the shade of wide old trees, David watched from a distance, warmth unfurling in his chest, a peace he hadn't known in so long. He saw Emily growing before his eyes, no longer a fragile girl hiding in her own silence, but a brave little heart willing to cradle a broken soul and walk it back into the light. That evening, back at home, Emily curled up beside David on the sofa, Shadow snoring softly at their feet like a child in deep sleep. Emily rested her head on his shoulder, whispering like a secret carried on a breeze, "Thank you, Daddy, for trusting me and trusting Shadow." David tightened his arm around her. In his heart, he knew that trust had saved everything. Trust, which rescued an abandoned dog, had also brought back the daughter he feared he'd lost in the dark. One late autumn night, wind howled through the crack in Emily's bedroom window. In her dream, her mother returned, long hair, soft smile, but faded into pale mist when Emily reached out. She woke up crying, little hand searching for comfort in the empty space beside her pillow. But the darkness no longer swallowed her whole. Shadow was already there. The moment he heard her quiet sob, he pushed the door open, jumped onto the bed, and pressed his warm body close. His nose nuzzled her cheek, tongue gently brushing away tears. "It hurts less when you're here?" Emily whispered, her fingers curling into the thick fur at his neck. "You miss someone too." Shadow let out a soft rumble, tail thumping the blanket. Outside, thunder cracked. Once, it would have sent him cowering under the bed, but tonight he sprang forward, teeth bared, barking boldly at the rattling window. Then he turned back to Emily, licking her trembling hand as if to say, "You're safe. I've got you now." She giggled through her sniffles, wrapping both arms around him, burying her face in his fur that now smelled of sunlight and clean earth. 1 year later, the backyard bloomed bright under the spring sun. A sturdy wooden kennel stood by the kitchen door, a neat sign swinging above, "Shadow's home." The German Shepherd, once a shivering stray, now gleamed healthy and strong, eyes deep and calm. Emily's laughter filled the air as she chased Shadow through the grass. He looped back, playful and gentle, always within reach. Each morning he saw her off at the gate, barking once as if to say, "Come home safe." At school, she'd beam at her friends, declaring proudly, "Shadow isn't just my dog, he saved me too." Inside, David stood at the kitchen window, sipping his tea. His heart, once locked behind grief's heavy door, now fluttered alive. Grateful for the night, a broken dog found his broken daughter and healed them both.